different customers or prospective customers to develop integrated solutions and lead detailed architectural dialogues to facilitate the delivery of the comprehensive solution. And also, you can able to view his profile link here and get to know more about that Sanjay Jain. This is our official website, that is www.fifthyear.com. Fifth Year stands for Fifth Industrial Revolution, and we are an initiative by Multicloud for you to help companies and technologies to openly share their learning and get opportunities worldwide through each others as well as through our partners worldwide. So if you visit our www.fifthyear.com, you can able to see we are already finished 1037 sessions, and also we are having 347 speakers, and we have issued 8,257 certificates till now, and we are growing with the members 24,513. And we are having a good relationship with Bata Global, Dell, Brilio, Tiger, Analytics, and Alibaba Cloud, Data Piper, and Philips, Jera, and multiple small and medium companies also. We are also having free. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. We also frequently engage evangelists and engineers from Microsoft and AWS. And you can also know that we are having a good partnership with Alibaba Cloud Academy. We can able to get you the certificate. These are the different certificates we are issuing. If you wanted to get the certificate, you can also visit our Telegram channel. We can help you to get this certificate. How we can help you? Uh, we can help to build your knowledge and digital presence and help you in odd hours when you are looking for jobs through a community. All you can get through the single link, that is www.fifthyear.com. So when you are registered through this link, you will get the certificate after the 5 days of the session. If there is any queries or issues, you can contact that website, that is Multicloud for you, and our Telegram channel also. I'll ping you this link to the chat of the WebEx. So now the session is over to Sanjay Jain. Hello, Sanjay.
Thanks, Vijay, for giving that brief introduction about me.
Thank you so
Hello,
much.
everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone, from whichever part of the world you are. Thank you so much for joining my session. I know this is Saturday evening and morning for most of the folks, so it's very difficult for everyone to be very energetic, just woke up from the bed or about to go to bed. Uh, I will try my best to not to make this session a bit of boring and try to make it very interesting, right? So yeah, if you ever feel that this is going to on a bore, more theoretical and all, please let me know. You can put it in the chat, as well as if you have any questions, queries, feel free to put it in the chat. I'll go through the queries as and when I get a chance on the SAM. Today we'll be talking about Airflow. Before that, let me quickly bring up my screen. Just give me a second. I'm using two screens, so you will see a couple of many a times I'll be switching here and there. Don't worry about it. Okay. Before we start, just a small disclaimer, beginning note. I have just launched one small cloud formation. It's not a small, it's a big cloud formation for deploying the Airflow entire stuff. I'll give you the code walkthrough and all, but this cloud formation takes somewhere around like 30 minutes and all. Like half of our session will go just deploying this cloud formation. So when we're talking about the concepts and terminology and all, let me put this cloud formation under execution. Okay. So I just launched it before when the session just started. So you can make sure the code we'll cover, the entire demo we'll cover is purely deployed in front of you, all of you guys. So with that, let me start around. The detail for the session. I think as VG also mentioned, the session is more around Amazon manage workflow for Apache Airflow. Now, basically, Airflow from its standpoint, I think most of the people may be aware or not. If you know about Airflow, that's fine, well and good. If you don't know, that's also fine. we'll take up in detail, assuming that you don't know. So even if you know, just pretend that you have no idea about what's an Airflow. We go ahead and do it. So I'll start from very scratch. Why do you need it? What is Airflow? What is Amazon Managed Workflow? And we'll start from that. So what is exactly, as I mentioned about the agenda, right? So we'll start from Apache Airflow. First at place, I always prefer to start with why. Why do you need an Apache Airflow? What's exactly an Apache Airflow? How exactly manage workflow differs, or what is exactly Amazon managed workflow differs in certain aspect from Apache open source Airflow. A quick demo of AWS managed workflow, some tips around it, and some resources if you want to need it. With that, let me talk about my introduction. I think Vijay did a fantastic job talking about me, but let me run through you quickly about my stuff. So, as my name is Anshit Jain, I work as a data analytics and cloud practice lead for our AWS business at Quantify. When it comes to the recognition, AWS Heroes, AWS Ambassador, as well as MVP by Multi-Cloud for You, which I've recently received, I would say in last couple of months and this year, as well as I'm an active AWS Mumbai user group organizer. So if you don't know what is user group, we can all chat after the session. It's like a same community. It's kind of a forum which is designed by the folks, by the community, for the community kind of a concept which I'm leading for the Mumbai chapters. We do fantastic different sessions around it with a vision and aspiration to learn and give that pass on that learning with other people. I've done different sessions talking about AWS Submit, AWS User Group, Community Day, and various other educational. I've also given multiple talks on multi-cloud for you platform too, and as well as very interesting, I'm also going to give a talk at AWS reInvent this year. So please do register. You can find the detail of the session on my LinkedIn handler. If you have not registered today, please do it. There are limited seats. We already have almost we are going to fill out the seats. So please do register. In case if you're going to be there in person, don't miss out to message me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to connect with you guys. Just in case if you are attending it virtually, please do register it today. And last, if you have any other questions, queries about my career, how I am able to handle with community talks and sessions, if you need some help in terms of technology, career advice, you can follow me, reach out to me on LinkedIn, Twitter, as well as GitHub. Most of the people on the audience, I have interacted with them some or other sessions. They know very well that I'm very active on LinkedIn. It's like a WhatsApp for me. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate. If you cannot ask on this session, please message me on LinkedIn, tweet me, DM me on the LinkedIn. I'll be happy to take it up. With that, let me bore you. I don't want to bore you a lot about my introduction. Let me start with what is Apache Flow. Let's get deep dive into what exactly is Flow. So if you go back in the past, right, if I talk about, let's say somewhere 2013-14 duration, right, there was SSL, SSIS pipeline used to be there, or more generically, if I talk about, there used to be an ETL pipeline and those kinds of concepts used to be there, right? A pipeline in simple, what I would refer as a sequence of activity, which have been wrapped in a package. So we used to do all kinds of job, right? Like very simple job could be read from database, process that data, put it into some table and send some notification. This is a very simple example of how an ETL pipeline can look like. Now, we used to do this from, I would say from ages. I would say easily from over 2-3 decades, we are doing these things. But the problem that used to be, right, and even I have personally gone through it in 2014 and 15 when I started my career was around this all pipeline used to run with a cron job. There was a cron job, cron tab, which we generally run in Linux, which used to take this entire job, sequence it one after the another, and that's how you do it. You introduce dependencies in it. Uh, there are no sophisticated way to look into it, what failed, how it failed, or even if it succeeded, where are the logs. It's quite clumsy and it was really a pain. I mean, I'm telling you, I've really burned my hands going through with cron. I mean, I would say for initial 3-4 months, I've just played with cron in my job. So that's how the entire cron things have been started, right? And as I talk about, there's lot and lot of issue. I mean, forget about retry and those kinds of retry, replay, those advanced things. It don't even give you the basic execution log. You don't even know whether it got executed or not unless and until you have a notification. And I mean, notification also is of the last job, right? Even let's say for some reason, cron itself didn't got executed because maybe the OS got restart or it got crash or something. You won't even get the notification. So, I mean, you're just mercy of fingers crossed something will work and you'll take it up, right? Or you'll go in the morning, SSH in the server, enter in the server, and you'll try to figure it out. So that's how the things used to start, right? Which is not just limited to cron. There are some more additional legacy orchestration tools are also there. Now the problem is a couple of legacy tools were very good, no doubt. They are very good, like Uzi we talk about and other kinds of tools, right? But they are very complex. They are not lightweight. You can customize them, but not up to the extent. You cannot bring your own operators. You cannot design it. They were not very user friendly, right? It was really a pain. So where people always have that, okay, should I go with some enterprise orchestration kind of stuff? There are some enterprise orchestrator tools are also there, right? Control M we talk about and those kinds of stuff. Should I go with that, or should I can I get something lightweight which is more open source, which help me to solve the problem, right? And most of every time the question that comes when it comes to this non-license, I would say the open source or some other way lightweight, the problem used to be the same, right? Starting from around, do you know that cron failed, right? As I mentioned, do you can spot, can you, sorry, can you spot when the task becomes slow 3x time? Can you visualize what is currently running or not? I mean, forget about the second and third question. Can you even solve the first one with the cron? Obviously, I mean, at least I had a bad experience. I don't know for the rest. Logs and all, still you can figure it out by printing the output or redirecting the output to a file, but unless you cannot get it visually, maybe on your some device friendly iPad or something kind of stuff, right? So that was a whole kind of chaos around it. With that, there was, and someone smartly come up with an Apache Airflow. Again, as we say the name Apache Airflow, from that you can easily interpret this was more an open source under Apache license software, right? But let's understand how exactly Apache Airflow help us to overcome the kind of some or other way the problem which we have seen in the previous way. Point one, pipelines are configured as a code allowing for dynamic pipeline generation. So now we all know, right? Most of the people here on the call would some or other way come from a DevOps background or from a cloud background. When you talk about any cloud, Google Cloud, AWS, Azure, Alibaba, or any other cloud, you would have heard something called as infrastructure as a code. Or infrastructure as a code, you talk about lake formation. I mean, data lake as a code also is a common thing. CI/CD as a code. Somewhere everyone wants to love as a code, right? All the operational activity they want to do as a code. I mean, the idea is very simple. When you have things as a code, it gives you more reusability. It gives you and allow you a chance that you don't have to rewrite everything. You can just modularize it and reuse that code, right? Similarly, the first point which starts from around for the Airflow is that you don't have to rewrite again and again. You can configure as a code, allow for dynamic generation. All we'll see in the examples and all of the stuff, right? You can write one pipeline, give the runtime variables, invoke that pipeline multiple times with different variables. Those all good kind of stuff you can do, which seems interesting. Point two, which was a pain in the previous one, is you cannot monitor. You have no idea what's happening, right? So here there's a very clear, there's a platform to monitor, control all sorts of data, the things which are moving from one job to another job, where exactly the pipeline is going, what happened to the pipeline. You have complete view visually. You don't have to go and log in into SSH. So you do not need to be an expert. If you can just correlate and troubleshoot it very well, that's more than enough for you. 100% developed in Python. Now, why we need to know? If it is 100% developed in Python, that means you can customize this. You can orchestrate, you can write your own Python scripts, bash scripts, shell script, which Python can execute, take that code and execute and those kinds of stuff, right? It's all about DAG, directed acyclic graph. So simply like how exactly we talk about the code, right? Ultimately what happens is whatever you will give to Airflow, which you'll understand this point very clear when we will demonstrate this. Whichever code you give to Airflow that you please go and execute, what it will do behind the scene, it will take that code in Python and convert it into a cyclic graph, directed acyclic graph, DAG. And from that, you can, it's more simply way like a JSON structure, not exactly JSON, a key value kind of a structure where you can easily replay a job, you can have error try, and those kinds of good stuff you can do, right? So that help you from a visualization perspective. Very interestingly, I think as I talk about initially also, Apache Airflow, right? So it's more of an open source. So So from an easily, you can define your own operators, you can executors, extend the libraries, those kinds of all good stuff you can do. So you can design your all of this stuff, right? So once we get into the detail architecture and components, you'll get to know what I'm talking about, the operator, executor, and libraries, those kinds of stuff. So those were the couple of advantages which we saw as a downfall in the previous slide. That's how Apache Airflow really helped to take this entire orchestration not only transparent in by providing the UI, simple to use and reusable, as well as there is a visual UI for that stuff, and at free of cost because it's an open source. So that's how Airflow become a talk of the town. All of a sudden, when people started all talking about, I want to move to Apache Airflow, I want to move to Apache Airflow, because of this whole reason that it's free of cost, it gives you a lot many other kinds of advantages, it's simple and you can customize it, and you can do all kinds of as a code, pipeline as a code, those kinds of good stuff, which make this as a talk of the town. So next time when you hear Apache service, right, just understand these are the couple of things which makes Apache as more promising orchestration engine or platform. Now, some may also think from here, why do I need an Apache Airflow? I am not convinced. Maybe I'm using some license kind of stuff, which I'm very good with it. Obviously, I mean, it need not to be that Apache Airflow worked for me or for some of the people in the audience that will work for you, right? It's all about use case by use case, how exactly you can customize it. But there are some important points we should you really think that whether you need it or not, right? So this is not just for the people who are not on Apache Airflow. Even on the people who are using Apache Airflow, you should really focus that do you have complete understanding, first of all, why are you using Apache Airflow? Not just because it's an open source, but is there something what you're getting out of it from Apache Airflow? So the point one which starts from around it, there are serial critical process to be maintained and monitor. So if you are into that kind of a project or that kind of a role where there are where a very critical business critical processes to be maintained and monitor, think of a very simple example can be that you take some all sorts of business data. End of the day, that business data needs to be transformed, sliced, diced, some cleansing work needs to be done, and you need to store into warehouse. Obviously, point one, that is very critical. Point two, all those operations do have some SLA, right? Some window. Within that window, you need to finish. So maintenance, I mean, maintaining those all tasks to be executed successfully, as well as monitoring, is a very critical thing. Point one. Point two, there are different kinds of job in different tool, right? So very interesting point. Let's say first is the pipeline, that do you have some critical pipeline? Two, are there different jobs in the pipeline? Like not only just Python jobs, there are Java, there is Spark, there is Shell. You have different job in the same pipeline, right? Most of the enterprise tool also supports if you have some standard way. Like Uzi, if you have all the Spark jobs or kind of stuff, then it will help you out. But if you have some different jobs, does it support? Maybe not, right? So that's kinds of stuff. It requires the dependencies and order in a specific way. As I talk about step one, step two, step three, step four, and for each step, you also want to some sort of a validation of the response. Does any tool support that kind of stuff? Not sure. A consistent notification, right? Notification in terms of if any job failed. When I say not job as well as the validation of the response also failed, you need a proper monitoring notification of the hit, right? And last, an action must be taken, some sort of an automatic action, maybe as simple as sending an email to you, sending a Slack message to you, right? Or at least very simple, generating an alert in some form, some shape, which help you to monitor. You don't have to sit with your laptop. I have 6 hours of pipeline, so I have to sit down and watch every time, just refresh and show my frustration on the mouse, click every time with browser refresh. You don't need all those kinds of stuff. Airflow is very mature in that kinds of stuff. So if you see any of the 5 steps, right, where you are handling critical stuff, you have different jobs in pipeline, there are dependencies and sequence in which you need some sort of a notification, and there is some action which needs to be taken if it goes wrong, then obviously 101% you need an Apache Airflow or that kind of a complex, I would say simple, but a complex platform which can help you to design any sorts of complex ETL pipeline. Now, very flexible. As I said, Apache Airflow is very simple. Why I'm just so much of being appraising Apache Airflow is simple, flexible, and all, right? So if you remember 2 slides back, I mentioned something called as Apache Airflow provides DAG, provides pipeline as a code, right? Those all kinds of stuff are very important. That's what makes Apache Airflow very flexible. Not only just the UI. I mean, most of the tools nowadays provides UI because they all know that the people are not, I mean, they want the developer's life to be simple. There is lots and lots of other business things as a developer you guys need to do, write the business code, talk to the business, understand the requirement. There's lots of other things you need to focus and scratch your head around that, right? So how the things can be made simpler for the small kinds of stuff. So UI is one of the promising thing which most of the things provides, right? Not just Apache Airflow, most of the stuff provides, I would say, the UI. But what makes it more interesting? So very extensible. As I mentioned, point one is you can write as a code, you can design your own operators, you can own design executors and other stuff because it's an open source. So you can easily extend. That makes it more flexible. Efficient CLI, right? It has a very beautiful CLI UI. Most of the people have seen UI, but even if you don't want to give an UI to play around with it, you can have an efficient CLI way also. Tags as a code, which we talk about. Backfill control. There are different modules and controls have been there, which we'll look into once we get into the UI and all. Very rich UI interface. How the UI looks like, I will cover up in the demo, but it's a very sophisticated UI with all sorts of, you can add user, give them permission, properly track, I mean, monitor it, not just monitor, but even get a detailed different views like tree view, graph view, Gantt chart view, and those kinds of stuff. And there is a different other exhaustive log windows also available, right? And or allow communication between tasks, which is that responsibility of the tag. Since you define each sort of job, tags is what makes it very simpler. That's why Apache Airflow is not simpler in terms of accessibility via CLI and UI. Via DAG as a code allows more open source creation. That's three things makes Apache Airflow very flexible and allow user to play around with it and all. Now let's understand why, I mean, I'm pretty sure most of the people by now would have understand what is exactly Apache Flow here, right? Apache, what is Airflow? Even if you're coming from a very non-Airflow kind of an environment, I'm pretty sure you would have a better idea now what exactly is an Airflow, how it can help, and all those kinds of stuff. And I'll take a pause here. If before we go into the managed version of it, like how exactly Amazon have differentiated Apache Airflow as a service. If you have any questions around it, please put it in the chat. I'll just switch the tab and see the cloud formation is complete or not. So it's not yet. I think as I mentioned, it's going to take. Yeah, should be done in next couple of minutes, I would say, roughly 10 more minutes. But yeah, if you have any other questions in the chat, please put it in the chat. I'll be happy to answer them. If not, then we'll move ahead with the Amazon managed Airflow. I know most of the mics are disabled, but yeah, there is a chat option on the right side. You can put the question in the chat. No worries. You can take your time. I'll go ahead and I'll move to the next section. Whenever you get a chance, you can put the question in the chat or you can reach out to the organizers and you can post the question to them. Cool. So let's understand how exactly we understood so far open source, Apache, Airflow and what, but how exactly what Amazon simplified it, right? What's a cherry on cake now? So let's understand that. So what AWS has done, right? AWS released an Amazon managed workflow for Apache Airflow. The very big name, very mouthy name, right? Amazon managed workflow for Apache Airflow. So I simply say it's managed version of Apache Airflow. Many people do say right? Managed version, Amazon managed version of Apache Airflow, right? But the behind the scene is this name, managed workflow for managed workflows for Apache Airflow. Now, what you have done is, right, Apache Airflow, as I've mentioned, so there's a first line which is mentioned, a managed service for Apache Airflow that makes it easy for data engineers and data scientists to execute data processing and workflows on AWS, right? What that means is, by the way, when we talk about this entire thing, right, any sorts of open source, any sorts of other stuff. Okay, I'll come. There is one question. I'll come to that question. So There are many questions that comes up, is right, when you talk about the open source and all. Who's going to handle the scaling of that thing? Who's going to handle the patching of that stuff? How I'm going to deploy it? How I'm going to manage it? I will need some DevOps engineer, right? When you do a self-managed version, these are the very common things. This is a very common stuff. And again, as I mentioned, if you go a couple of slides back, I mentioned that you can also use for complex ETL pipeline, right? So let's say you're doing some Spark job in Apache Airflow. Apache Airflow should also compute-wise needs to be strong enough to run those kinds of processes, right? Again, you will integrate with different services, but there's a complex, multiple pipelines are running. So if I talk about one of the customer which I've worked in the past, when they were using an Apache Airflow, they had 100 plus Apache Airflow pipelines, which were being used by like easily like around 30, 40 different data science team. You can think of how compute this entire thing needs to be, because the processes are not executing within the Apache Airflow thing, right? So what I mean is, let's say you're running some sort of a query. The query will run on the database, but you still need the Apache Airflow to pass on that control, right, between the jobs, process that thing. So let's say, for example, you're running a Python Python script. That Python script will run in Apache Airflow, which is validating the response, triggering the next job, or passing the button to the next job. Those all control tasks have been taken care on Apache Airflow instance, right? So think of Airflow as that you need to have so big and so headache, right? You need to not only scale the auto scale that, you also need to manage. If some server goes wrong or hard disk is full because of log, you need to clean it, you need to patch it, right? Those were the different pain that come up when people started using the self-managed version of Apache Airflow. Obviously, it was an open source, so you don't have to pay for the Airflow, but you have to pay for the compute instance, the EC2 or the server. So with that, what Amazon did is Amazon took that open source project of Apache and wrapped it as a service, as a managed service. Now, the beautiful part is, now someone might say, okay, what's interesting in that? The interesting is now you don't have to deploy, install, patch, manage, and those kinds of stuff, right? You only have to pay for the even the cost, right? When it comes to, there is one UI and there are different other components. We'll deep dive just after this slide. Those all different components also works in a serverless mode. So from a cost standpoint also, you're not being charged a lot. You are being charged an almost equivalent EC2 price, which already you were paying previously. They're not charging for the Apache license because it's an open source. And what you're getting additionally on top of that, you don't have to worry about any sorts of DevOps practices and those kinds of other stuff. So that makes it more simpler as a data engineer, as a platform guy, or as a business guy, that you only focus on your business thing, which was the other licensed software provides, right? That you focus on stuff. So Amazon Manage Workflow for Apache Airflow does the same thing. It took away all sorts of complexity from an operational standpoint in form of a manage, package that up, and you just only do whatever you're doing from a business, and rest of the functionality remains the same. You can access the UI, you can write your own custom code, you can trigger the stuff, you can orchestrate anything on-prem or on AWS, right? So it just provides you all sorts of possible action in a managed form. So that makes it as a differentiator. And from a release standpoint, November 24, 2020, they released Apache 2.0, and recently they also, Apache 1. And currently they also, I would say a year back, year and a half back, on May 2021, May 26, 2021, they released Apache 2.0. Again, you don't have to worry about it. But the latest one, what we are using is a major version is Apache 2.0. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think the current one what we have is the Apache 2.2, which will verify on the console. But yeah, the major version what we are using is second version, Apache 2. There's an interesting question in the chat, which I was expecting around from the people. I'm very new to the Apache Airflow, probably where it will be useful. Good question, as I mentioned, right? Apache Airflow is more an orchestration engine. So there are various other things what you can do. You can have your data pipeline. Very simple example. Let's say you need to extract the data from your database, put it into S3, trigger a Python job, read that job, and write it to Athena. Those kinds of stuff, right? You can easily also do it one after the another. But let's say if I want some complex, you want an entire pipeline, which is schedule. If something fails, you need an error notification. You can customize it with DAG and all. Those all good kind of stuff that can Apache Airflow can do there. So Apache Airflow not only can solve that problem, but even it can do. Now, Some may also ask me that since you are an AWS evangelist, step function also does the same thing. Then what's the difference in Airflow? Now, you are 100% right. In case of step function also allows the same kinds of stuff. You can validate the response, you can write pipeline as a code and all lambdas and all those kinds of stuff. But in case of step function, there are not more customization. When I say customization, obviously you can do by writing your all lambdas. But let's say if you want to customize it more further in terms of UI, in terms of maybe role-based kind of stuff, right? For the people to leverage that, but a different platform where people can use the UI and all, but a more managed way, RBAC and all. Again, step function you can do in IAM and all, but it's as a part of the console. If you need some other platform, you can do with Apache Airflow. Point one. Point two, in step function, you need to write the lambdas. You can integrate with other services. Now it has a wonderful SDKs which allows you to integrate with various other things. Airflow also does a similar kinds of stuff. One of the other interesting thing which I can talk about Airflow is also a cloud agnostic. So manage Airflow is a AWS managed version, locked version of it, but Airflow as a DAG, the DAG can be or more can be a cloud agnostic. So today, if you're using Airflow on cloud, tomorrow, if you want to use on-prem, you can still use that. Or on your laptop, you can use that. So that's other advantage. Whereas step function is more, even though it's same manage, but it's more, I would say, completely locked version of AWS. So that's an even difference when it comes to the step function and this. And from an Airflow perspective, you can do complex ETL pipeline, you talk about data processing, any sorts of data consolidation you want to do, any sorts of orchestration, what you want to do, right? That you can do. Again, don't think and get yourself confused. This you can also use for CI/CD. No, you cannot use for CI/CD. You can correlate this as Jenkins. If someone comes from a DevOps background, how you have Jenkins, similarly, Airflow is more from a data processing and those kinds of stuff. So that's when it comes to the use case and how the Airflow differs. Now let's understand how exactly, I think a couple of points I've already covered in the previous slide as well, right? When I was explaining the Airflow, the managed workflow for Apache Airflow by Amazon, how it differentiates or how it helps, because there is one is a core concept of Apache Airflow, which does all sorts of heavy lifting. So how exactly to correlate similarly to an ADF? So Azure Data Factory, okay, we can take this up discussion, right? How exactly Azure ADF will work, or is it the same? Is it any correlation and all? We'll take that up in upcoming. But how exactly Amazon managed workflow, Apache Airflow helps, right? So at the core, what you have is the entire your Apache Airflow engine. You have your entire Apache Airflow engine, which provides the UI, tag as a code, other kinds of monitoring, alerting, those kinds of stuff. As I mentioned, AWS took this, package it as a wrapper in the managed form. Now that managed form, what does it help? It helps us from a setup standpoint. So simplify, you don't have to do the setup when you deploy or create the environment of Airflow. The setup has been taken care by AWS. The upgrades are taken care by AWS. You don't have to worry the upgrades and all, right? As I mentioned, all things are taken care by AWS. Security, most of the AWS services are comes with IAM for authentication, KMS for encryption. So they take care of it. Maintenance, as I mentioned, upgrades and all those things is a manage. So this the same rule applies to managed workflow also, that AWS takes care of this entire managed standpoint, right? So if you go towards left side in terms of the description, easy to set up and maintain, high availability in terms of multi-AZ and all, auto scaling with Celery, Executor, and IAM and VPC. Now we'll all able to connect all of this when we go into the architectural standpoint. But five simple things which I talk about is setup, upgrades, maintenance, security, and scaling, right? And how it achieves all of the stuff is very simple. I'm pretty sure most of the people knows some bit of AWS, so you can easily correlate once we deep dive into the architecture. So here are the more 5 things which AWS provided on top of the open source Apache. 5 things or 5 wrappers on open source Apache Airflow, which makes any data engineers or any operational guy, makes it more simpler for them to leverage, use, and focus on your business use case. Moving towards next, how the architecture looks like, right? So I'm not going to deep dive very zoom in like ground zero, this is how it works and all of the stuff. We don't have to worry about it. Just this is for the knowledge. since AWS takes care everything for us, we don't have to worry about it. But from a knowledge perspective, let's understand, right? So all of these icons, the orange icons which you can see here in the architecture, these are all the Fargates, Fargate pod, right? So now most of the people, when it comes from an AWS or DevOps background, you can understand how AWS does this, all the scaling magic, right? You don't have to manage, don't have to patch, don't have to auto scale, because Fargate, for the people who are very new, Fargate is a serverless container. It will only charge you up till the container is up. You don't have to worry about all sorts of patching and all, because whenever you launch a new version of container, it comes with upgraded and maintained and patched OS and all, right? So that's how AWS has come up beautifully and intelligently. It tried to solve of patching, upgrades and maintenance and support mode with leveraging Fargate behind the scene, right? Uh, when it comes to, if you remember, I mentioned about the security part of it. So security standpoint, they have all sorts of stuff, right? They have CloudWatch, they have KMS as an encryption. They also are using VPC endpoints. So if you see all sorts of this stuff, right? Database, web servers are using VPC endpoints, which has TLS 1.2 encryption standards. So if you want to connect, let's say if you want to connect with a service, so this is the service, the main service, right? The managed service, and this is all which is running on the customer in our environment. All sorts of connection is being done by TLS 1.2 encrypted standards. So which also provides security along with KMS and CloudWatch for log monitoring. Another, when it comes to integration standpoint, I would say they have S3, SQS for queuing and all, which we know why you need it. When you want to design a scalable architecture, you need queuing, you need S3 for storing all sorts of artifacts. So that's how the architecture of AWS manage workflow for Apache Airflow looks like behind the scene. Now, many people try to even give some more complex about it, right? Some people make it simple, some people make it complex. It all depends, as I mentioned at the beginning of the slide or the session itself, whether to use Apache Airflow or not, whether to use manage Apache Airflow or not, or whether to make more secure, it's all depends on your business use case and requirement. If you really comes from a sensitive industry, so when I say sensitive industries like healthcare, insurance, any sorts of regulatory industries, you always have to focus on your security, right? There, all those kinds of stuff, VPC endpoint are, I would say, 100, level 100. There are more kind of other securities which are required on top of it. Now let's understand in detail what are those components. So in the previous slide, right, if you go back, there are different kinds of stuff are there where you have Apache's Airflow scheduler, Airflow workflow, you have the metadata databases, web server, and all those kinds of stuff, right? So what are this exactly? So when it comes to the scheduler standpoint, right? So scheduler, you can see the scheduler is more like your entire responsible for scheduling your job, as the name suggests, schedule, right? Schedule your job. Now, job can be any Apache Airflow job which you give. That job can be a standalone job or job can be in the pipeline. It's a scheduler. Then you have the web server. Now, web server is the UI, which we will look into the demo. The web server is nothing but the demo which allows you to play around with that entire Apache Airflow. Then you have the executor, or some people try to combine this executor and worker together because they, in generic sense, they do the same thing. Worker, they are working on something, right? But when you really deep dive and focus on the components, there is a different executor and worker. Worker are more like a that master slave kind of thing, right? Slaves are not but the worker which perform the action, and executors are more like a master, which are like a control plane or the master which does all kinds of stuff, right? So when to schedule, which to schedule, where I have to run the executor, right? So if you see some, as I mentioned in the, I mean, we'll see in the logs also if the log get printed, but there is something also called as celery. Celery is more like a worker, right? So worker, I mean, Celery executor is more like an orchestrator, a web server kind of thing. So those all runs on the executor, which is like a control plane. Your worker are nothing but like a data plane. No, I won't say data plane, but more like a task, a local worker which perform all the task. And metadata is the data plane where you store all sorts of metadata And simple. I mean, you need a UI, so you need to render the output somewhere. You have to store that output somewhere so it can print on the UI. Things like job status, the failure logs, when it got started last time, where is the code residing, where is the other kinds of stuff, right? So all metadata about that Airflow job gets stored into the metadata database. So those are the four high level components, but in detail, five components. Let's recap: scheduler, web server, executor, worker, and the metadata database. So these are the five components which makes the entire Airflow ecosystem. And if you remember at the beginning, I mentioned on the second or third slide that from a scheduler standpoint or executor, sorry, on the executor standpoint, you have your own executor also. Now, Celery comes out of the box. You can also use sequential. You can also use local executor. Those are the other things also you can use if you don't want to use Celery. Let me tell you, Celery is the best one so far, multi-threaded, best and most stable executor you can get. But again, if you have sequential or some other local executor also, you can leverage. I don't see most of the people try to play around with this, honestly. They do play around with the metadata, they do play around with the web server to customize as per their stuff, right? In worst case, they also try to play around with the scheduling or kind of stuff. But very rare I've seen people playing around with the executor, because Celery is the best what in the industry, what is recommended. Now let's understand exactly in detail what are the other things when it comes to the DevOps standpoint, right? We understood the ecosystem about how it looks and those kinds of stuff, but let's understand the entire DevOps standpoint. So obviously, a managed service comes with lots of other advantages also, not in terms of patching and all. You can easily manage and deploy small instance, right? Easily deploy the small instance and maintain it. So it starts from, I think, M1 point, M2 point small is a very small instance that you can start from. You can have a different environments for prod and all, right? You can have all sorts of kind of stuff, right? You can package it, you can have prod, you can have dev, those kinds of instance also you can do. CloudWatch, I think you can see from the right side itself, I've given some kinds of dashboard screenshots, right? Which gives you log monitoring and dashboard. So if anyone comes from a DevOps background, it can blend very well with your DevOps strategy. And it natively integrates with CloudWatch. So even if you're using some third-party log monitoring tool like Sumo Logic and those kinds of stuff, you can also integrate with that. The very important point of Terraform, I mean, is that it you can do with CloudFormation. So I mean, the demo which I'm doing, the entire Airflow, I'll give you the code, so don't worry, but the entire Airflow I've orchestrated with a single click. So I don't have to worry about not only the DAG, the pipeline within the Airflow you can write as a code, but even the Airflow itself you can bootstrap and you can automate it. So that's more beautiful that you don't have to worry. Not only you can deploy multiple instances of Airflow with help of Terraform and CloudFormation, even the pipeline within that also as a code. So that makes it more simpler that how many number of instance, how many number of environments you have, you can easily take that instance across the sum. Right, scaling up, scaling down, very simple. As I mentioned, it's a Fargate behind the scenes architecture with users. So couple of stuff, right? How exactly it scale up, scale downs. It is directly proportional based on the number of jobs. So the Fargate pods comes up for the execution is the number of jobs, right? So number of jobs which are currently running and number of job queue that defines the downscaling, and task running and plus task queue and the number of containers, right? Number of pods and number of containers define how much they need to spin up. So that's how scale up, scale down. Again, you don't have to worry about, you don't have to go into this detail, but just for your context, this is how it works. So it's a proven mathematical formula, very transparent. AWS is not going to take care. It's very simple. You can do it on your own, right? Now, security, as I mentioned, it's very important. DevOps, so we have understood all the manage, DevOps, all sorts of beautiful features. Let's understand from a security standpoint. It integrates with IAM. Obviously, manage AWS services. You can, if anyone ask you anywhere, what is a beautiful advantage of managed services? The simple answer you can always give is it can integrate with CloudWatch, log monitoring comes out of the box, security, integration with IAM comes out of the box. Any service which you pick up now or in future, if you see manage, you can easily talk about two things, and the third is the scaling. These are the three things for anything, whether it's glue, whether it's you talk about MSK, which is managed Kafka, whether you talk about managed workflow, which is Airflow. This all different managed services comes with this beautiful features of integration with security, scaling out of the box, and other kinds of stuff, right? So from an authentication perspective, you can use IAM and federation. Now, when I say authentication is from the UI purpose, do you have the permission to execute the jobs, those kinds of stuff, right? Which is something we always refer as role-based access. So authentication, you can have IAM or you can have other federations around it, like single sign-on and those kinds of stuff. VPC and security group, obviously it's behind the scene, it's like a compute engine. So you can connect inbound, outbound kind of traffic and those kinds of stuff. Security managers, any sorts of credentials you can store in security managers and you can fetch from it. IAM execution, it integrates well with other services, right? Other AWS services. So also, obviously you need to have an IAM integration for the same. From a CI/CD standpoint, right, you can version the code, deployment target, flexible integration with CI/CD, tags automatically get synchronized, plugins and all, right? We'll see this demo. What you have to do, right? There are three simple things mostly. I mean, after this slide, we will go ahead, right? After in the demo, you will see there are three simple steps what we have from a demo perspective. Just spin up a Airflow environment, copy the tag into S3, monitor the UI. This is as simple. Every 30 to 60 seconds, approximate, I would say, not roughly 30 to 60 seconds based on the size of the instance. But yeah, in a minute and a half, you will see, you just copy the tag and automatically tag if everything is parsed successfully. You will see the tag is in the Airflow instance. You don't have to refresh, synchronize, run some process and those kinds of stuff. Automatically Airflow will take it from the S3 around it, right? So simply what you can do, you can have some code base, let's say the integration with CI/CD. You can not only version your S3 bucket by enabling the versions in S3 bucket, you can have your CI/CD which just compile all the tag, run the code, put it into S3, automatically Airflow picks at 30 to 60 seconds every time. You can also have your own custom plugins and Python code, which we have saw in the previous slides. Those all things can be done very easily with CI/CD integration. There is no tight dependency with Airflow and DevOps, right? It very loosely coupled with help of the auto synchronization between S3 and Airflow and with the adoption of S3. So that also makes Airflow very compatible that whichever and whatever kind of CI/CD processes you have it, you don't have it, still you can easily use Airflow. That's the beauty of it. Now, I think I've talked about a lot about Airflow in last, I would say 45 minutes or so. Let me try to deep dive in demo quickly. There are a few more things which I want to demonstrate, but before that, I want to go ahead and talk about exactly how the Airflow looks like and other stuff. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, please put in the chat. I will just get back to the questions right after the demo. So this was the Airflow, I would say the CloudFormation, which we deployed just before our calls. I mean, before I start my presentation, I can see that is now completed. Let's quickly deep dive what we have done in the template, right? So this entire, if you see on the architectural standpoint, what we have done is, if I just go back slides, couple of slides. So from an architecture perspective, you will see there are VPCs, there are different subnets and those kinds of stuff you need to give, right? So same as what we have done, we have defined the VPCs. I mean, if you don't know about it, don't worry. I'll give you the code. You can practice at your end. Again, just be cautious. It may charge you $1 or $2, not max. So delete the resources when you don't need it. But again, I'll give you the code and all. I've stored it in the GitHub. I'll get the link, right? I'll paste the link right away. So I think I'll just paste the link after the session there. I'm not able to get the UI messenger box. No worries. I'll do it right away after the session itself. But again, those kinds of stuff, I mean, I've given all sorts of codes, not only the examples of it, but even the CloudFormation template in the GitHub. So you can take it from there. And yeah, coming back to it. So it's deploying all the VPCs, internet gateways, subnets, and those stuff. That's what we are doing, all sorts of route tables. So this is all part of the VPCs, right? What we need. If you don't know VPC, you can look into the good VPC documentations and other stuff. There are good examples are there, right? Which will help you to learn. This is exactly where we start creating the, this is where you're going to start creating the manage Apache Airflow, where we talk about the environment. As I mentioned, what we have to do is three things: create environment, upload the tag into S3, and then you monitor the UI. So this is exactly the Airflow environment. This is the security group. As I mentioned, you can also provide the security groups to the Airflow, the IAM role for authentication, right? That's what we are doing. So very simple. What we have done in the CloudFormation, you define the all sorts of VPCs. That also, if you need to have a custom VPC, if you want to use your existing VPC, you don't have to worry. You have to worry, do very simple stuff. Create an Apache environment. provide the IAM role, provide the security group, and create an S3 bucket. These four things is what I'm doing in this cloud formation, excluding all the VPC part, right? So that's about what we have done in this cloud formation. Now, someone may ask, it took 30 minutes. Yes, it took 30 minutes for me to deploy because it's doing all sorts of automation. I mean, all sorts of deployments and all. We started around, give me 1 minute, let me plug my charger. So we started around at, you can see at, this is in IST, right? So you can see at 9 p.m., 9 p.m. 10, but we started around this entire code. So yeah, so that's why we started around the code, and this all got completed around somewhere around 42, 9:42. So it took us 30 minutes. And most of the time, if I see 30 minutes would be out of the 30 minutes, 27 minutes are spent only on deploying the Apache environment. So Apache environment needs good amount of time, like almost 27 to 28 minutes to do all sorts of spinning up the instance, all sorts of deployment of the binaries and those kinds of stuff. So now we have the Apache Airflow ready. Before I do any other thing, right, I play around and other stuff. I'm going to walk through with two demos. But before we go ahead and play around with Apache Airflow, I mean, with the demos and all, what I want to do is I want to go at the output. And this is my URL. I should not have done that. 1 second. So incidentally, I've just click on that same tab. So it just moved me out from the AWS console. So okay. So this is how the Apache Airflow looks like. What I have done is as simple as that. I've just click on that URL. That URL took me into this Apache Airflow. So from an authentication perspective, I will use the same single sign-on from AWS, right? So you can use authentication via login and other stuff, or you can use the managed thing. I'll use the management. So this is how the entire UI looks like, right? Very simple. Here you will see all the tags listed. You can have the list of users and roles. You can have the tag window. You can have the browsers and other stuff. You can define the variables, any sorts of configuration plugins and other stuff, right? So if you don't even come from like a coding background and you really hate to write as a code, still you can use and leverage all those kinds of stuff here, right? The documentations are also here, the REST APIs, and also you not only can leverage the UI, CLI, you can also have the API references, right? So that makes these things very beautiful. This is how all you can do around it, right? What I will do as a next step is very simple of it. I will try to give a hello world kind of a demo. So for that, what we have to do is there are 3 steps. If I go back to the demo part, there are 3 steps. Create an environment, copy the DAG and plugin, and play with the UI. The part 1 is done. We have created the environment and we just saw the UI of it. Now part 2 is we have to copy the DAG or the plugin and plugin. If you have custom plugin and DAG is nothing but your code which you want to execute to the S3 bucket. 3, access the UI. What I'm going to do is, so as a part of the cloud formation, as I mentioned, I've launched an S3 bucket. So I'll see, 1 second, where is my S3 bucket? So you can see my S3 bucket here, right? So I'll right click and open that S3 bucket, which will directly take me to the S3 bucket. Okay, now next what I'm going to do is, once it get loaded fully, I will try to create a folder as called as a DAG. So it's going to, the cloud formation which I have written is been written with an expectation that all DAGs will be deployed or will be part of this DAG folders. So it's going to only synchronize. So again, from a best practice or the cost perspective, right? It's not going to synchronize your entire S3 folder, S3 bucket, because there are other files and those kinds of stuff, right? So it's only going to synchronize a particular folder which you specify while deploying or creating the environment. When I created the environment in the cloud formation, I'll specify that all my DAGs will be in the tags folder. So you only synchronize this DAG folder. So it will only listen to the DAG folder within this bucket rather than the entire bucket. Right? So this is my entire code base, which I will give you before the session ends. This is my DAG folder. I'll take this simple tutorial example. It's a very simple hello world you can think of. and I'll upload it. So if you remember, what we have to do is we have to create the environment, upload it, and wait for almost a minute, minute and a half. And you will see automatically when you refresh here, there will be the DAG. This is tutorial.py will be synced here. And the name will also be the same. So from there, you can identify that, okay, this was the one which I synchronized it. So as you can see, when I refresh it, immediately it just give around it. These are the different controls what you can have. None. These are all statuses, right? The job status, what you can see. These are all the execution status. And you can get all sorts of runtime. What you will do is we'll just click on run tag, trigger tag, right? As soon as I trigger, you will see that it just started running. Here it is none. Here it is queued, right? And if you go inside, click on this, you will see all different kinds of stuff, right? Tree view, graph view, you can schedule this from a calendar standpoint, durations and those kinds of good stuff what you can do. You can also see the code what we triggered, right? It's a very simple hello world what we have done, and that's how you can do all this stuff. So if you click on this, you can also clear it, clear the UI, market success, market failed, even though if something goes wrong, those kinds of good stuff, you can all take care of this. So now, once this is done, what you need to do, as you can see, all sorts of dark green, right? Previously, there was a light green when it was running. From this color annotation, you can see. Success means this color shade. So everything is got executed successfully here. And that's how you can view it from the graph standpoint. This is how the graph view looks like. This is exactly like a DAG view you can think of, right? You can also get the code which we ran. This was a sample code which I took from the Apache Airflow website. A very simple, I would say, bash operator. And as well as you can also get some other kinds of stuff, right? Task durations, and also even if you want some more task level details, that also you can get the task duration and Gantt chart and those kinds of things, right? Good stuff. So this is how it entirely looks like, right? What we have done, another thing. So this is as simple as what you have to do. What we have done is spin up an environment, put the tag into the S3 bucket, and that's how it works, right? So this is how very simple you can do. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a simple, a kind of a complex end-to-end use case, which I'm going to do. Again, I hope that gets success. It might have, I mean, it has failed like twice for me before the session. So let's see, it should work. What I'm going to do here is I'll spin up a DynamoDB. I'll put a couple of records in that DynamoDB. I'll run the Airflow glue job. That view job will extract the data, get the data out from S3 or from DynamoDB, put it into S3, partition, deploy Athena table, glue database, and all those kinds of stuff, right? So it's going to do all those kinds of things. For that, there are two things what I have to do. So please go with me. And this is actually I would say the live example, what we generally use the entire stuff, right? The ETL pipeline. There is data source, then there is ETL, then there is entire S3, then you have Athena. So nothing but what you are doing is we are building an entire ETL pipeline, and Airflow will be the orchestration engine for that. So stay with me and please observe it. So this is the same Airflow what we have. Part one, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the S3 bucket and I'm going to upload a folder. So add folder, I hope everyone here on the call already is aware about how things works on the S3 standpoint. So this is the code which has a Python file. Now this is nothing but my glue job. So as I said, Airflow is an orchestration. Again, you can run the Python within Airflow itself, but I want to make it like an enterprise production grade pipeline, right? Where I don't want to do anything within Airflow instance, but all with the service. So Airflow will trigger the glue job. So this is my glue code. Glue ETL code. And again, please be mindful if you are using the demo, which I will give from the GitHub, don't change the folder name because there is some sort of a hard wiring is done. So even if you change glue ETL instead of code, the pipeline will fail. So first step, as I mentioned, I've done is the glue ETL pipeline, right? I've tried to create the glue ETL pipeline. The part two, what I'm going to do is, since I have uploaded the code now, I'm going to go and try to deploy the stack, which is going to create a glue ETL job and any sorts of permissions. So for that also I've written a cloud formation so we can purely focus on the demo. This is a job template. I'll click on next. Glue-etl-job. Why you didn't put into the tag folder? Okay, good stuff. So this is a very good question is why you didn't put in the tag folder. As I mentioned very clearly, DAG folder will only have DAG. This is not a DAG. This is my actual ETL glue job. So when I'm doing this entire example, there will be a tag which will come up, which will only go into the tag folder. So everything will not go into the tag folder because unnecessarily your Airflow will try to synchronize that and it is going to copy it in its local. So you have to be mindful of what and how you need to structure your S3 bucket. So let's say it's not just the code script, even if you have some sort of a configuration file, right? So don't try to put everything in the DAG folder. Create a different folder outside to it, maybe data, codes, DAG, and then within the code you can segregate around it. So only the Airflow DAG will go inside the DAG folder. This glue is to be considered as a task. This glue is considered as a task, which is right. But currently what we are doing is we are trying to spin up a glue job which will be executed by this task, which is what being orchestrated or triggered by the DAG. So what we are trying to do is we are going to the lowest level. So we'll first spin up a DAG, right? In actual execution, there will be a DAG. The DAG will go to the glue job, glue job in the Airflow glue job. And that Airflow glue job will trigger the AWS glue job. So currently what we are defining is the AWS glue job, not the Airflow glue job or the Airflow DAG. So I've given the cloud formation name. The capacity wise, we'll keep it bare minimum, right? The DynamoDB table where we'll have the data. What we have to do is we have to give the S3 bucket. S3 bucket where we have the glue code and the output will be stored. So this is the same S3 bucket where we have all the DAG stored. I'll show you how exactly it's also referring to the glue ETL code. I'll click on next and submit. Right? This cloud formation will take like almost a minute or minute and a half. It will be very quick. In meantime, I'll explain you the cloud formation, what we are doing. So first, as I mentioned, this is the DynamoDB, which act as a data source for us. The glue database, which will be sitting on S3 and hearing what data we are extracting from DynamoDB in S3. This is the entire glue table. Ultimately, there's a glue database table. That is the same table which we will query to get the response of the data. The glue role, IAM role. This is exactly the important thing. So as I mentioned here, we are defining the AWS glue job, and this is the location. So that's why I said, if you see this path, if you see the path, I've tried to, this is not dynamic. I'll see if I get a chance and next week I'll try to make it dynamic enough. But what I've tried to give is, I've told that, okay, there's a bucket name which I'm going to pass, and within the bucket name, listen to a fixed folder and fixed script name. So if you try to change small here and bit, and if you don't update the cloud formation, your entire glue job will fail. So what this entire glue job, this is a glue job, AWS glue job, not the Airflow glue task. This is a AWS glue job, which will be here taking this entire Python script. And we are passing all of these parameters where you need to write, what DynamoDB table name you need to read, where it's S3 location, and all sorts of kinds of stuff what we need to provide as a permission. So as I mentioned, the glue job is done successfully. Before we go and trigger the glue job, right? One thing you need to do is you need to open this and verify the second. You need to verify whether the glue job is successfully deployed or not. So we'll go into the glue job. And under glue job, under job sections, okay. So this is a job which we just deployed, right? DynamoDB to S3 export. And if I refresh this is the script which was there in the glue job. If you are able to see the script, that means you have successfully deployed your glue job. Most of the time, what personally I've made a mistake, I've given a wrong S3 folder, the code didn't sync up pretty well on S3, and when I deploy the cloud formation, the script, I was not able to figure it out, and that lead to failure of my pipeline. So please verify it before you trigger your Airflow pipeline, because the error would be very different. You'll not able to debug it that whether it's a glue job does not exist. It will just say glue job failed, which will make it very difficult. Now what we need to do is, and again, the glue job database also what we deploy, right? This one. What we have to do, second step is we have to define the variable files. So as I mentioned, I've tried to make this as an environment or like a complete production scale. So we also need an environment file, which will be changing from environment to environment, right? So first I have to upload a JSON file. So that I have put it here. Okay. And I will import this file. I'll click on. So what I'm passing is I'm passing a glue DB, S3 bucket and a region. So first I need to update it. Please ensure these are outdated values. You have to update this value. So first what we have to do is we have to get the bucket name. So our bucket name is Airflow deployment and this, right? So I have to go to the variable and I will update my bucket name. This you can automatically also do. When you become an expert or as a part of CI/CD pipeline, you can fine tune your Airflow that it can automatically can also read from S3. Since I want to show you more of the UI features, I've tried to do it manually, but in real time in a production, this can automatically can also be fetched from the S3 itself. So I've changed the S3 bucket. Now I'm going to change the database name, the glue database name. So this is my database which was deployed via CFT. Right? And I'm going to save this. So glue DB, S3 bucket and a region. Now I'll go to the DAG. Now comes the interesting part. Okay. And before we go with the interesting part, we can do that. I mean, let me just do this. So there was a question interesting that why didn't you upload it, the glue job in the tag, right? So because as I mentioned, that was a glue ETL code. Now I will upload the actual glue job. So for that, first I need to upload the requirement.txt, which will have my plugins, which is required. Second, I will upload the DAG file, which is this DAG file. So now I have a DAG file for this entire pipeline. The DAG file will read the data from DynamoDB, put it into S3 bucket. Then there is a glue database, glue table, which will refresh the database, partition it, and we will query the Athena table at the last to verify the pipeline successfully ran. So we have a DAG, we have the requirement file, we have the variable file. There's one thing which we are missing out, right? So Airflow will sync this automatically once everything is there, right? Which is good. But still there is one thing what we are missing. We have not populated the data into the DynamoDB yet, right? Interestingly. So we have everything we have done, but we don't have the data in DynamoDB. The DynamoDB we just deployed via CFT, it's blank. So I'll try to insert some dummy data in DynamoDB. I'm not going to insert much of that number of rows, right? Which will be the same thing. You take 2, you take 10, it's going to be the same. So I'll go to the table. This is a table, right? And we'll click on create action, create items. Welcome to Airflow. Row 1, right? We'll give row 2. Right? And if you want, we can give okay. So we have added 3 rows here. So we have the data. We are good now. So I'll close this And let's go to the DAG. And let's refresh this. By now, I hope DAG would have been synced. If not, then let's wait for it. It should be anytime be synced here. Right? So once it is synced, we will able to see that DAG and we will run the DAG. So we have done, let's recap what we have done. So we launch a CloudFormation temp. First, we upload the glue ETL code into S3 bucket. Second, we deployed a CloudFormation of the glue ETL, which will deploy the glue database, the glue tables, glue IAM role, and DynamoDB and the glue job. Then we define the variable file into the DAG, into the Airflow, which is required for our entire DAG file, right? Last, we have inserted the data into the DynamoDB, which will be synchronized to the S3 bucket. I hope the DAG should be here. So as I can see, the DAG is here now. DynamoDB table to export. Let's understand the code first, what we are doing. Okay. So this is the config file. This is the code where it is. This is the place where it's going to read the config file. So config file, which we deployed here in the variable section, it's going to read the region S3 bucket glue. The table name is test table, the DynamoDB table, which we deployed. And again, it doesn't mean I have given DynamoDB as an example. You can also have Aurora, Redshift, any sorts of databases you can leverage. DynamoDB is my example, which I've given. This is a class. Within the class, first step, what I'm doing is export DynamoDB table to S3 in a Parquet format. All right. Point one. Point two, we are doing is we are just taking this entire DAG, DynamoDB to S3 export. Then we are adding a Athena partition. And at the last, we are updating the Athena operator so we can view the data. So within this entire DAG, right, which is end to end, we are doing 3 steps, which we will see in the visual workflow. So in the visual workflow, you will see this 3 steps. Okay. So now is the time where let's go and kick it off. I hope fingers crossed this should work. But let's try to kick off this pipeline. So we have kicked this off with the pipeline. It's currently running. You can go here, click it off. And you can see it's scheduled, right? You can click on this one. And currently it's in the DynamoDB S32 stuff. So you can go to the logs. This is how you can click on the job. Go to the logs. This logs will give you the exact CloudWatch logs how you have, right? And as you can see, this has failed while doing the get job. That it is not able to perform the get operation, right? So this is how you can troubleshoot it. So intentionally, I made this job failed because as I mentioned, I want to give you how you can troubleshoot it. So this is how you get the exact kind of a detail how this entire thing works and those kinds of things, right? What I'm going to do, if you see the error is very simple. An error occurred, exception denied while getting the glue job. The Airflow instance does not have the glue permission. So what we are going to do is we'll simply go and give a glue permission. Just hold your patience for 5 minutes. I know we have overrun. We'll finish it up in 5 minutes and then we will be good here. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, please put it in the chat. We'll be happy to answer them. So I'll go to the IAM. Right? Again, I'm going to refine this policy before I push the code into the GitHub. So you don't try to do this, but for this demo purpose, I'm just trying to give this an administrator access for now. But again, don't do this in the production that you give administrator. Administrator will allow Airflow instance to do anything with simple as delete the entire AWS account too. So please be mindful. It can go and delete any resources. But since this Airflow instance is very specifically I have deployed for my demo purpose, I'm trying to go ahead and do this, okay? You don't try to do this at your office, not at home. At home you can do it, but not at office. So this is how it again started. We'll go the graph view, which is what I love a lot about the most preferred view for me is the graph. I'll go in the graph view. I'll click on the log. Let's see where it goes now. I hope we don't get an error this time. Yes, we don't see any errors. So I hope that this should run. So this is how what happens, right? From a view perspective, if you see, it tried to create the glue job, right? Now there was a question which I think was a bit confusing when I was explaining at the beginning. So these are the 3 steps. DynamoDB to S3 export is the now a glue airflow task. Within this task, it kick it off. If you go in the log, you can see from the log, it kick off an actual glue job behind the scene, right? So this is running an actual glue job. And even you can verify if I go to the AWS console and if you go on the job section, you will see under job, this is the job which we deployed from a cloud formation, right? If you go to the details of this job detail, you will see it is running currently, right? So the Airflow is just the orchestration wrapper, not just, it's an intelligent orchestration wrapper, which trigger this AWS glue job as a step 1. This glue job will get the data. If you go in the scripts, right, what it is doing, it is doing all sorts of Spark context and all the stuff, right? It is establishing the connection with the glue DynamoDB table and then writing it that data frame into the S3, right? So that's what the glue job is doing. Second, accidentally changed it. So if you go now to the, go back, let me go back. I don't want to make any changes. It's under running state. So currently it's succeeded. Good. So our step 1 is done. Now let's see the step 2. So here you can see the entire step 1 is done successfully. If you go back, you'll see a green color. So it's a green icon, right? It is done. Now, if you see, there's a blue shade and this is the running task. Similarly, let's identify what's happening in this particular job. So now what exactly is doing it? It's marked as success. So this task is also done, which is exporting this thing, right? It's the data which is it's just adding a new partition, the new partition in the glue. So this task has also succeeded and it would be now getting it into this particular task. Let's see the logs, what exactly is happening in this one. So query, this is the Athena query which is running. Athena query is still in an intermediate state, which is queued. It should quick off anytime. So yeah, it succeeded. 0 downstream task, but this query is still in intermediate, which was the refresh partition. It's got succeeded, which fingers crossed, thankfully finish up a pipeline end to end. And this is refreshes. If I refresh my pipeline and if you go to its second, if I go towards this particular stuff, so it got failed at the previous instance, but if you see now, it's all in a green state. So this ensure my pipeline was successful executed, which you can also see on the console. It is succeed state, right? First attempt failed, second attempt succeeded. Now, how I can verify that it got succeeded? As I promised you that, okay, it's going to take the data from Athena, take the data from DynamoDB, put it into S3, there will be glue database, and at the last, it's going to refresh data or synchronize the data into Athena. So what we'll do is the next is very simple. We'll go to the Athena. And here, if you go to the Athena, select the right database. This is our database, right? And automatically you will see the test table, the same table which has a DynamoDB name. I'll preview the table, which is nothing but select star from this table limit 3, and we should get the 3 rows. Welcome to world, welcome to Airflow, hello world, and my name is Sanchit Jain. So this is around, you're getting around it. Since we ran the pipeline twice, the pipeline ran for the twice, right? You can see this. The pipeline ran for the twice. If you go to the graph, it is creating around, it ran for the twice thing 1 and 2. You can see that the glue job has total 6 number of rows. So that's about the demo. From today's demo, what we have around this, does it support CDC? Yes, it even supports CDCs and other stuff, right? I'll come up to your question also, but this is a very simple and actual use case what we have solved. We took the data out from the DynamoDB, put it into S3, refresh Athena, partition the table, and those kinds of stuff. So this is how exactly what we have done end to end. all kinds of good stuff. I mean, this is how the production will look like, right? So that's about from today's demo and today's session about the Apache Airflow. We started around, if I quickly go back, we started around from why Apache Airflow, where we understood around what is exactly Airflow and other stuff, the Airflow concepts, why do I need Airflow? It is very flexible. Then we understood about the managed workflow, the demo, I mean, what exactly the benefits managed workflow provides, the architecture behind the scene, the concepts, the additional benefits of deployment, scaling, and those kinds of good stuff, security, and at the last, DevOps integration and the demo around it. And in demo, we understood there are three things: create an environment, copy the code or copy the DAG and the plugins in S3, and access the UI, Apache Airflow UI, right? So that's about from today's session in the demo. I'll look forward now towards the questions, right? So first question I already see in the chat is, does it support CDC? I say yes, it supports CDCs and those kinds of stuff. If you go to the very basic concept, as I mentioned, it is an orchestration engine. The CDC or any sorts of complex transformation, it depends on the glue job which you're writing it, not on the Airflow. Airflow is a intelligent orchestration. If you want to orchestrate every 15 minutes, every half an hour, every 1 minute, it will do the job. It is just an orchestration layer. It all depends on the underneath code what you're writing. So let's say it supports, I mean, the question is whenever you receive a new item, it should trigger a glue job to S3 and all, right? That's all depends on the orchestration pipeline, how you're orchestrating the pipeline around the stuff in the glue job, right? But even it depends on the glue thing, like how exactly the glue code should be supporting those kinds of stuff. So as I mentioned, it's more about an intelligent orchestration workflow, which can do all. And again, yeah, I'll give the link of the code base. There is small refining that needs to be taken care, which I'll do it in the code itself. But this is the GitHub repo, which I was referring during my session. I've just put in the chat. You can clone that repo. You can do around it to ensure this is going to charge you. So please be, I mean, after you're done with your demo, please delete the resources which you spin up. But yeah, I would request everyone to please play around with this demo, and you already will get the video recording, so you can replay the recording and you can play around with this demo, which will help you to deploy and run this. Any other questions you have which I can help you to answer? If our data architect revolved around Glue service, we can orchestrate with the Glue workflow. Okay, that's a good, interesting question. What you asked, right? Toshif, if we can use, I mean, there's a Glue workflow, there is an Airflow. You can use Glue workflow also, you can other stuff, right? Let me ask you one simple stuff, right? You can use Glue workflow, for sure you can use Glue workflow. Now, Glue workflow is more from an orchestration of the Glue jobs and other stuff, right? If I'm correct. There are other integrations what you can do with S3 and all, but when it comes to the prerequisites, like things like if you saw in the workflow, in the workflow standpoint, there are certain kinds of prerequisites that you need to do, which is, let's say, syncing up the code from the repository or having the environment ready or more kind of stuff, right? So Glue workflow, you can use a Glue workflow also, but it's only limited to the Glue, right? You can't even have EMR if you want to have. So let's say if I have a pipeline where one job is an EMR job, the second job is a Glue job, third job is, let's say, Redshift maintenance, you cannot do with Glue workflow. Yes, supports only Glue family, not having integration with other services. Exactly, that's what I was explaining, right? If you have one EMR, second Glue, third Redshift, it will not work, right? Then it will just give up. Then exactly the Airflow works fine. And it's not only Airflow can integrate with this. I've seen many other cases, right? Specifically, you would have heard another term which is very renowned nowadays in the market called as MLOps. Every machine learning company wants to do an MLOps. All sorts of data preparation pipelines, including the training pipelines also in cases I've seen running in Airflow. Like if I talk about a couple of other use cases where I have worked as an architect, I've used Airflow for data preparation to orchestrating the entire training pipeline on SageMaker and all, right? So it's not just limited for the data preparation. It also been leveraged for the other kinds of use cases. There exactly it stands outstanding, not just limited for data engineering, but also for the MLOps perspective. Any other questions? Yeah, obviously, I think there's a good example which is given in the chat, right? API from a legacy sources, right? So as I mentioned, when I was doing this demo, which was getting from DynamoDB, as I mentioned, the database can be anywhere. It can be on another cloud, it can be on your on-prem, it can be your AWS, any databases. Airflow is just an intelligent orchestrator. Your entire code, you can extract the data maybe from IBM DB2 and those kinds of stuff, right? That makes it more beautiful around the stuff. Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, somewhere you can think of like how Databricks code, Spark code you can have, right? The notebook or Spark code kind of stuff. So if you are really thinking of moving away from some heavy enterprise kind of a data platform or legacy orchestration tools or enterprise like orchestration tools, there you will see the true colors and true benefits of moving towards or adopting Apache Airflow, because there you will see all different kinds of integration, nitty-gritty, which you will need when it comes to kind of stuff, right? We can compare with Uzi. As I mentioned at the beginning of the session itself, right? In the slide one, you can have Uzis and those kinds of stuff. I've also seen Uzi fine, but Uzi also has more, I would say I will put them into legacy bucket. Uzi has been very renowned in the market for an orchestration, but again, limitation when it comes to doing multiple different kinds of job. So obviously, Uzi, you talk about cron based coins and those kinds of stuff. If I go back in my slide, that's what I compare in my initial slide itself. That you can do all those kinds of stuff, right? But again, Uzi again, you can do all those kinds of things, but the way Uzi works is more complex, I would say, and just very specific to the language support too. Whereas Airflow, as I can see, I was a Spark developer, I can write Spark. You come from Scala, you write Scala. Airflow has no limitation. I mean, you have a glue job behind the scene, right? In Scala, doesn't matter. You write a Lambda function which you orchestrate via Airflow, which can be in Java, .NET. Language is not a barrier for Airflow. Any other questions? And again, if you have any other questions, please put it in the chat or you can put it in the LinkedIn also. I'll be happy to answer. There's one more question. My question is not related to this session. Do you have any migration tool migrating from DynamoDB to RDS? Okay. I mean, do you have any migration tools which is migrating from DynamoDB to RDS? You can use this one itself, right, for migrating around it. You can have your schema conversion. Anyways, there is, I mean, for sure, it's not going to be very lift and shift kind of a migration because you're moving away from NoSQL, which don't have a schema, to an RDS. So you need to do heavy kind of lifting transformation and all. So you can always have Airflow as an orchestration and Glue for doing all sorts of transformation. You have to do some transformation when you want to move from NoSQL to SQL or SQL to NoSQL, vice versa. So you can use Glue workflow, which we just just discussed a while ago. Glue workflow can help you also to move away from DynamoDB to RDS, where you can not only take the data out, but even can process, massage the data according to the destination schema.
So thank you, Sanchit, for the nice session. Members, you will get your certificate automatically in your emails. This will automatically be mailed to you within 3 to 4 days. Just do check your spam folder, and if you have any questions, anything, or all the content which Sanchit has given will also be uploaded into the event page that we have shared. And you can connect with us on Telegram or directly on our multi-cloud page on LinkedIn, Facebook, or different community pages which are there on the fifthIR.com site. I will be happy to help you. And the recording will be uploaded within another 3-4 days on the same link. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you so much. I know I extended a bit my webinar. I really apologize, but thank you so much for everyone for patiently helping me along to go through the demo. And thank you for joining the session. Again, if you have any other questions, you can reach out to me on the LinkedIn. I'll be happy to answer. And the GitHub link I've already given in the session. I mean, in the chat, so you can take it from there, as well as I'll share with the organizers. So you can take it from there also, just in case if you have missed it, I am posting it again, and I'll share with the organizers too. So that's all from my end for today's session. Hope you guys liked it. And please do subscribe and follow me on LinkedIn. And yeah, keep learning. Thank you.
Thank you everyone.